It has come to my attention that I've not updated my series on demon ecologies with another episode for quite some time. So today I thought I would ease us back into the subject with a little tale of when I was visiting the interplanar nexus city called Sigil, and found myself doing the most harebrained but strangely rewarding thing I've ever done. I sat down at a dirty little bench table opposite an actual devil and chatted with him about the Blood War. I do not advise you to do this. It is a very dangerous course of action. Devils are not to be messed with. That being said, this was not the safe confines of a summoning circle, mind you. This was a devil that could have at any moment just reached over that table and casually snapped my neck with a flick of their wrist. I think I must have gotten that fiend on a very good day, or they were just in the mood to indulge in the insignificant, I don't know. But they had been the one to strike up a conversation. I was just standing in a grim drizzle of grey solid mist at the cramped shop door, eating a bowl of mystery meat stew I dared not look at too closely. The devil just got my eye contact and indicated with a clawed fingertip that there was a spare seat right across from it inside, out of the murky weather. The invitation alone was most unusual. Devils normally ignore me entirely, so, well, I was very curious and quite cold, so I went inside the smoky venue, squeezing past a few other Sigil urchins. I noticed as I sat down there were 2 or 3 piles of salt on the rough wooden tabletop. I was careful not to disturb them and carried my bowl close to my lips, spooning in chunks of fatty meat in a hurry, as I had a feeling I was not going to get to eat more if this being started talking to me. The meat was hot enough to make my eyes water, both in having come right from a steaming cauldron, but also because it was loaded with spices from across the plains. I was respectfully quiet as I sat there, trying not to cough up a bit of hairy gristle, looking at the salt piles. It's common for creatures from lawful dominant planes to do this sort of thing. Sit here and sort the salt bowl's contents into small, medium and large grain sizes, or walk about a room and straighten out picture frames. It helps them deal with all the chaos going on around them. Even when the devil was not flicking tiny salt grains rapidly this way and that with one claw, they were counting under their breath. I could tell. This devil seemed particularly focused on the here and now, which is interesting. But they were certainly not there to meet with me. I was nothing but a momentary distraction.
You have travelled much, Sage, but I have not seen you on the front lines. Does the eternal conflict not get enough attention, even from you, and that singing library you come from?
Every question from a devil is dangerous, and I just take it for granted that they know more about me than I could imagine they would. Devils are shockingly intelligent sometimes. This one was wearing the form of a winged bearded devil. Twin rows of curved black horns ran down its skull, and it wore a bandolier of gleaming crystals, rough cut and many different types. I had no idea what they were for. As its eyes bore into mine, I could not help but notice the writhing motion of its beard, a loathsome thing that more like a mop of living hair that grows from a troll's head. I've only been around for a short time. I don't know what fate has in store for me, I replied, diplomatically. The devil regarded me out of the corner of its deep red and orange eye. I could smell brimstone wafting across the table at me.
Best you to hope, for your eyes are not made to see the things I have seen, mortal.
I leaned forward in my seat, pausing in my eating, swallowing down a glob of pepper-soaked fat, or perhaps a super overboiled hunk of cabbage. I don't know. But this devil seemed to be offering to tell me stories. I reached for my backpack and my leather-bound journals, my writing kit and some fresh paper. The devil barely watched me, instead enjoying a deep red wine of some sort. Devils, most immortals, start off their stories with a snide remark about how pointless mortal beings are. You get used to it. Sure enough, the devil started to talk about the Blood War. I sat and just scratched notes into my book as fast as the ink would dry. I knew enough to hold my questions until the very end, as fiends hate to be interrupted while they are talking. This was certainly not the first time that this devil had talked to a mortal. I could tell, and that they didn't bother establishing exactly when and where everything took place in their tales. Normally, lawful creatures always do this when they're talking. They tend to need the context. I don't, and the devil knew that. They just launched into a description of the worst environment I think I can imagine. The last hours of a lost battle of the Blood War, one where the demons are winning and the devils have mere moments to retreat before they all get pulled into the abyss. There is a reason why most wizards learn the most widely used infernal language, because devils and demons have words to describe things which normal beings don't have to deal with. such as the different ways in which reality can break down, or the different words to describe planar distortions, and the words used to describe time as a distance when teleporting through locations with different speeds of time. Devil's language is peppered with these terms, and the one I learned on that day, which I'd never heard before, was the Incompatibles, translated into common. The devil across the table from me glanced into my eyes when they first uttered the word, so I raised an eyebrow, indicating that yes, I certainly would like to know more about that topic. The devil said that it's only in an environment with rampaging, completely out of control planar breakdown that those entities appear. And as far as I know, there are very limited but effective ways to deal with them, and it's one of the best explanations for the existence of beholders I have ever found. You won't find this in any monster manuals, because it's very unlikely anyone who has been in a place where these things show up, or will survive long enough to make any detailed notes. But here it is, all that I know about the Incompatibles. Incompatibles are entities from the deep far realms who simply cannot exist in the normal reality shared by the prime material plane. Most of the inner or outer planes, the only place the Incompatibles can exist is within whatever nightmare, incomprehensible reality they originally came from. And really, I don't think most Incompatibles have any intention of interacting with the D&D multiverse at all. They just fallen through the cracks in reality somehow, and for the short time that they can exist, they can cause tremendous amounts of damage. A perfect example is an incompatible type the devil's called an apart. This thing is invisible, but viewed through true sight, it appears like a rod in the air of random size, which is bursting out loads of energy. It appears to twist and mangle matter it makes any direct contact with, and as the name suggests, tears things apart. Anything that crosses its path is simply torn asunder and hurled in different directions. It can be temporarily neutralized with an anti-magic field, or can be pushed into different paths of destruction using telekinetic force of some kind. Aparts tend to show up in a bunch. They spray out of fractal tears in space, and their motion creates very distinctive twin tornado patterns around them. So to a distance of no less than 10 feet, they are just a ripping yin-yang funnel of air which blows things away from it, never towards it. So they move around in random directions, throwing debris everywhere, tearing things out of the ground, and just generally howling with noise. The sound is quite deafening. Anything that can hear and is within 20 feet of an apart needs to make a DC 13 wisdom saving throw each round, or fall temporarily deaf for 1d4 minutes, or until they make a successful saving throw again, at least. Communication near an apart is very difficult, as it's likely that delicate objects such as glass windows will just shatter and the jagged bits will fling around, cutting bystanders pretty badly. The ground over which an apart has moved is both churned up and also compacted like concrete. Thankfully, aparts only exist for a little while. They eventually slow down and cave in on themselves after a few minutes, but this may be after they have reduced a village to a pile of twisted rubble. Aparts sometimes appear when teleportation or planar portal magic goes drastically wrong, or when a teleportation effect of large size is suddenly dispelled. Another type is simply known as black stars. You may recognize them in their highly contained and controlled state as summoned artifacts called spheres of annihilation. When they pop out of massive explosions such as planet-busting types caused by attempting to teleport celestial bodies such as moons and small rocky planets, they blast out like cosmic buckshot, eating clean holes out of anything in their path. Uncontained black stars will draw other objects towards them, as it is wherever the black star is located is now the direction of down, which is a lot of fun when working out spelljammer ship combat. But in that sort of environment, you'll be lucky to keep that ship intact for very long. Black stars are much like the exposed core of a collapsed star. They emit no light at all, but are supermassive. So heavy, they generate gravity curvature that can cause you to drop into them if you're within 60 feet. You will start to burn with radiant energy damage, which will probably kill you before you fall into the black star and make contact with it, in which case you just get disintegrated. However, true resurrection is possible from this kind of death. The black star cannot stop souls from escaping its grasp. The best way to deal with black stars is to hope they appear in even numbers, so that you can telekinetic drag the things into each other, which destroys them. Problem is, they weigh about as much as a small moon and immolate a huge area when they strike each other. Think a mile-wide fireball spell. Again, beholders are very handy to have around to deal with these things. Then we have what is known simply as a loop. One of the most insidious incompatibles that the devil told me about. Loops appear when there is a severe breakdown in temporal physics, and these entities appear and seem to feed on pockets of time, which can be extremely dangerous. And the good news is that they always drag a few Chronovoids with them when they arrive, so be on the lookout for those. Oh, you haven't heard of them. They look like a blob of gelatinous matter that holds a roughly ovoid form. The surface of the Chronovoid is an iridescent film, not unlike a drop of oil on the surface of water, and its internals are a dull gelatin. They are communal organisms, so large and small sizes will show up, and they all basically are the same critter, and they can feed on linear time creatures by absorbing and rapidly aging them. So don't let these little jelly creatures touch you, as any large enough to engulf you is quite capable of inflicting 3d6 necrotic damage per round, and they're mostly incorporeal, so you will need magical means to fend them off. Loops are not living entities. They defy a lot of explanation, so I'll just describe a common type of encounter and how to run it as a DM. Loops can appear as a ball of mist, a black orb, or as any object in the area the loop is about to feed on. Once feeding begins, the loop entity will start to emit a strange light. It looks like a UV lamp, but a different color entirely, sort of like the black sword lightsaber thing in the Mandalorian series. You'll know it when you see it. Once you do, you're already in severe danger. The area of effect of a loop's feeding range varies, but it's seldom larger than 100 feet in any direction from the loop entity. It creates a Groundhog Day effect, where 1 to 4 rounds of action will start to repeat. Best pray that 1d4 random roll is high. Unlike the popular TV trope, any intelligent being that is in the area will immediately be aware that time has started repeating. They'll also feel a strange kind of temporal inertia that seems to make it very easy to do exactly what already just happened, and much more difficult to change the course of events. A simple mechanic represents this, so let me put on my DM's hat here and tell you how to handle it. First of all, it's much easier to encounter a loop in the middle of some other combat. Some nothing burger far realm monster or demon spawn. Loops tend to arrive close behind other far realm creatures, particularly these massive worm-like monsters called wisps, which I'll cover in a video just after this one. So any being in the loop's feeding zone starts the repeating round in the same initiative order they were in before the loops began, and will start each repeated sequence in the same initiative position. So keep that simple, and I can't stress enough that you have to take careful notes before and during this encounter. Every action, every dice roll for at least 4 rounds before the loop beginning needs to be written down. Otherwise, it's very difficult to pull this off. Players can just repeat the same actions they took the first time. Any action that succeeded is now rolled with advantage, and the damage dice are re-rolled. The highest result used out of the 2 results. Actions that failed suffer the opposite effect. The rolls are made with disadvantage, and the damage dice are rolled twice, and the lower result taken. However, any action that is successful now counts as a success on the next repeated loop of time. Changing the action taken to something different is taxing. The player characters must make a DC 13 Wisdom saving throw to be able to change their actions from what had previously occurred. This is temporal inertia. It's not hard to pick this up, and players will get it immediately. Just seriously keep those notes up to the moment and you'll be fine. Lose track and you're going to end up with complete chaos at your table. The loop entity is not alive or dead, and its physical form is just random. I'm not sure that they can be killed, but it is possible to interrupt their feeding and escape from them. Again, the anti-magic field of a beholder's large central eye is capable of kind of punching a hole out of the situation, so living beings can escape the loop's deadly trap. See, each time the 1 to 4 round long sequence of events starts to repeat, it's shorter by 1 round. If it's down to just 1 repeating round, it loses 1 action per repeat. This loss is fairly random. It's not always the last action of that round or the first. It can be any particular moment. And that action is just gone. When the loop is done, nothing is left. Just a bubble of void that remains is essentially a place with the exact same properties as the negative energy plane. So undead and any wandering non-linear time creatures such as the Chronovoids can enter or leave without being harmed. There are many other incompatibles, the devil assured me. Some are just entities that emit massive amounts of a particular type of energy. Some are like displaced random nightmare dream realm portals, and others do nothing more than change all the colors on anything they get near. There are also a lot of living spells that can show up and cause more havoc. You never really know what to expect. I mean, the environment is absolute chaos. I asked the devil how it deals with this stuff, and they just looked at me and smiled.
You ever see a time bomb or a dimensional anchor rod? No. These are items that we take with us that are unsuitable for normal reality. We have collected these arsenals of forbidden equipment across the multiverse. often invented by little mortals like you who don't know what they're playing around with. There are whole worlds destroyed by some of them before we find and safely store them, until they can be used, and they must be used. Also, we keep beholders with us, slaves, of course, difficult to deal with but invaluable for survival in a retreat situation.
Retreat?
When a section of the primal or other planes is pulled into the abyss and ravaged by demons, we retreat.
You don't attack the abyss itself.
You don't know what it is.
I heard a rumor once that a pantheon of gods tried to attack it, and it ate them?
Very true. The Ayamara demons were spawned by that. Those gods did nobody any favors and were all consumed. So we take steps to prevent that from happening again.
Against the very gods?
You give them far too much credit.
And that was the end of that conversation. The devil saw someone, or something I did not, rose from the table abruptly and left without a backward glance, reaffirming that feeling that I was so insignificant to this ultimate veteran soldier, I was not worth a second thought. However, I know better than that. The devils never do anything without a good reason. This entire situation was staged, and rather than worry about that, I just shrugged my shoulders, sipped my somewhat revolting stew broth, and put it out of my mind. Sigil is not a very pleasant place. It's cold, murky, wet, dirty, and packed with dangerous places and even more dangerous beings from across the multiverse, many of whom are simply there to escape the gods, who cannot enter the City of Doors. It pays to avoid any being who is forced to hide from the gods. I was just there to collect a delivery of rare books and get back to Candlekeep as soon as I was done. With that, I'll leave our sage to his business. Thanks for listening. My name is AJ Pickett, and I'll be back with more for you very soon.